Welcome back, everybody, to the Land Between the Meadows, Kentucky History Podcast. I'm your host today, Mr. Cable. I'll start off saying I hope you're safe and sound, and it seems like we are getting a little more free. A little more of the restrictions are being let loose. Of course, we still have a long way to go, but we will get through it together. And I hope you're just happy and safe at the moment. You're not losing your sanity yet. Hopefully the light at the end of the tunnel is getting a little closer and so forth. But I want to start off by saying the normal, typical things. You can connect to us at KY History Pod on Facebook or on Twitter. I wanted to announce it again. We have an Audible sponsor. Go to audibletrial.com/KY History Pod, and you can get a free book for the first month of your Audible subscription. Now, remember, it will keep charging you, so if you don't like it or don't want to keep it, you need to exit it off. But you also have plenty of options to choose from as far as the books goes. You can get The Frontiersman by Alan W. Eckert. You can get Southernmost by Silas House, who's a Kentucky author. You can also get all of Colin McCann's books on Audible as well. And I want to thank Colin again for coming on the show. I'll be honest, he's probably like the most famous person I've ever spoken to longer than 10 seconds. But he is an internationally known author, and I was very pleased that he came on and was able to talk to us about Narrative 4 and his books, of course. And storytelling. Such a great storyteller, which is a lot about what history is about. On a side note, the most famous person I have ever met was, I assume, was probably Dolly Parton. I was a valet in Richmond, and she was the big guest at the Catholic church there in Richmond, and they pulled up in the car. She got out. She said, "How you boys doing?" And me and my friend said, "Good, ma'am." That was it. That is my interaction with Dolly Parton. But hey, she walked right in front of me. So today, let's get back to storytelling. We're looking more into Lincoln County's history, and you could probably say that this is more of the smaller towns. I mean, Houstonville is a pretty good sized town, not much, about the same size as Crab Orchard, especially over time. But we'll also talk about Waynesburg and McKinney. Now, hopefully I'll be able to get them all three done in this one episode. If not, they might travel over. The next episodes will probably be more about the small communities around Lincoln County, and those are just kind of brief. This person settled here, they had a school here, and so forth. But Houstonville, as I said, is pretty much about the same size as Crab Orchard. And then you have Waynesburg, which is probably smaller, and then McKinney, which is even smaller. But those are also prominent communities because they had schools there for the longest periods of time. Let's begin with Houstonville. And we begin our discussion about Houstonville in 1780 with Carpenter Station. Three brothers, Adam, Conrad, and John Carpenter, former Revolutionary War soldiers, came from Rockingham County, Virginia, around 1779. They settled around 3,000 acres in 1780. It was one of the first four settlements in Lincoln County, and they were soon joined by other families to strengthen their fort/station. Again, we look at stations. Stations are kind of like these really small forts. Something that somebody, 2 or 3, 5 to 10 men could build up and fortify for an extended period of time. But this station, of course, was like many others and very vulnerable to Indian attacks. On one occasion, John Carpenter's daughter, Margaret, who was 16, was sitting in an African-American's lap, I assume probably a slave, when a group of Indians fired on them. The African-American was shot and killed. Margaret was unharmed and ran to get her father's rifle. She emerged from the house, ready to defend the settlement and pursue the natives. The Indians knew that once the shot was fired, that they would awake all the other white men, so they retreated quickly and covered large distances, and they were not able to be contained. But over the first 20 years of the settlement, Indian raids occurred, but settlers never faltered. The last raid that was recorded was in 1799. During 1779 and 1780, a great hardship, of course, fell onto the settlers. This was a very rough time for crops and just survival in Kentucky. During the time, one of the carpenters went to Boonesboro and bought supplies for $40, which is a lot of money. And one of the first doctors, Lindsay C. Powell, and his two brothers, they left, I'm probably going to get this name wrong, but Albemarle County, Virginia. And on their way, they split up, and Lindsay ended up at Carpenter Station and married Margaret Carpenter. Now, in 1818, a group of families, Russell, Morrison, Carpenter, Bailey, Houston, Spears, Logan, Powell, moved a few miles from Carpenter Station where a village was taking shape. And this village would become Houstonville. And what's interesting about this location is that it was the center of the state. And the trails that led to Houstonville in 1818 are near the same highways that mark the land today. Hence why Houstonville is a crossroads town. it was named after Steve Houston. He was one of the families that originally settled there. There was a big cholera outbreak in Houstonville in 1833. Just a side note, not a lot to talk about there. Now here's some very interesting stories about Houstonville, which we know there's many more, but these are the ones I kind of have at my hands here. So Hanging Fork was really close to Houstonville, and it got its name literally. 2 outlaws from Virginia were apprehended by law enforcement near Hanging Fork Creek. And of course, they were very unruly, and they weren't listening to the officers, and they were just kind of really, I don't know how else to say this, but not good prisoners. So what did the officers do? They said, you know what? Let's take care of this now. And they hang them on the spot. No trial, nothing. They committed the crimes. Let's hang them here. And so therefore, it was named Hanging Fork. Now another confrontation, and this time is with some outlaws. In the 1860s, a group of outlaws entered Houstonville. One of the outlaws didn't have a horse, so he stole one. A local man spotted the outlaw trying to take his horse, and upon trying to confront the outlaw, the man was shot dead. The outlaws then made their way towards Fort Herod, continuing their journey to try and kidnap the president. The president at the time was Abraham Lincoln. So if you have any idea about some outlaws trying to kidnap the president, the Alcorn Opera House held many forms of entertainment: stage plays, motion pictures, and a skating rink. In 1903, Miss Georgia Lewis presented What Became of Parker Company. In the 1920s, The Birth of the Nation was shown, and local talent also graced the stage. That's one of the aspects of Houstonville I'd really like to get to know a little bit more about, is the Alcorn Opera House. I found a poem that I'm going to read a little verse from. I might try to post it on social media here soon, but it's called Over the Hills to Houstonville. Over the hill to Houstonville, past mead and vale and waving grain, with fleecy clouds and glass sunshine, and the balm of the calming rain. On where hidden beneath the hill, in the widening vale below, chime and smithy and distant herd sing a song of the long ago. Over the hill to Houstonville, where silent fields are sad and brown, and the crow's long call is blended with the anvil beat of the town, where sweet the hamlet lives on, with drowsy land and quiet street, the gables quaint and the houses gray, and an air of the far away. That's about half the poem. There's a bit more to it, but I'll leave it at that. And the thing is, the poem does not have an author on it. I could not find who wrote the poem. But anyway, a nice little poem about Houstonville. Now, near Houstonville is the smaller community of McKinney. John Kennedy and 2 brothers, Archibald and John McKinney, set out to improve the land in the Kentucky frontier in 1779. The next year, John and Archibald McKinney returned with a group of settlers and began McKinney Station in 1780. They farmed the rich land and drank from the spring in McKinney. A lot of the McKinney family fought with the Lincoln County militia in the early days of the settlement. In the 1920s, McKinney had 2 churches, 1 hotel, a bank, flour mill, and 2 grocery stores. 2 passenger trains stopped at McKinney every day, which they also had a train depot, of course. The McKinney Christian Church was formed in 1906, and they bought the building for $610. Which brings us on to Waynesburg. Waynesburg, I know there's not a lot about McKinney that I was able to get, which there's more, of course, but again, I do want to stick to things primarily before 1930, 1940. There's some exceptions, but I don't want to get too much into stuff that's happened in the last 100 years. We can get actual stories from that which I hope to finally get when all this ends, or we can get out again. The libraries open up. So let's go on to our last little community town of the day, which is Waynesburg. Waynesburg was settled in the early 1800s and was named after General Anthony Wayne, who was a Revolutionary War hero. The first post office was established in 1824, but we know that the town was settled before then. But that was when the post office was established. A stage route was established between Somerset and Stamford. And I really wonder kind of what it became, which is probably what the railroad came in as. The Southern Railroad came through in 1880, which again built up the livelihood in the town as well. But the Union But the Union was in Waynesburg for a while during the Civil War, and in 1863, the 49th Regiment of the Kentucky Infantry of the Union Army stopped in Waynesburg and added 13 men to their ranks. In 1890, Dr. A.K. Caldwell opened his office and served for 20 years there. In 1905, the Barnett and Demeraux Funeral Home was established by Jimmy Reynolds, and the Waynesburg Deposit Bank was built in 1907. Now, 3 factories, and listen to this closely, there were 3 factories in Waynesburg at one time. A canning factory for tomatoes and molasses, which lasted 2 years, a steering wheel factory that lasted 2 years, and a Delco plant factory that lasted 1 year. And another note, which is very interesting, Miss Venus Ramey was crowned Miss Lincoln County in 1939 and later became Miss America in 1944. So that's pretty cool for Waynesburg. That's all I got for this episode. And I know, again, some of these episodes are kind of hit and miss on the stories. Some of these stories are really interesting and I'm able to get more information on with what I have here, but others, kind of the way it goes, I don't get as much out of them. Now, the next few episodes will be small communities in Lincoln County, and they are not, and it might actually take 2 episodes to do all the small communities. I think there's about 20, maybe 15 that I was able to get something out of. There's other smaller communities that really there's not much to say about them without having more resources. So with all that being said, I'll remind everybody again, I hope you're enjoying the author interviews. I'm working on more author interviews as well, and even not just authors, other avenues that might benefit you all, that you might enjoy. Again, if you have anybody you would like for me to reach out to, let me know. I'll try my best. Don't forget, if you want to try out Audible, give it a shot. Your first month is for free, and you help support the channel. If you don't like it, cancel it after your first month. Well, you don't have to wait the whole month. You can cancel it in 2 days after you download your first book. You get a free book. Supports the channel. It's a win-win for everybody. There's many options to choose from. Take your pick. Again, if you want to connect to us, you can connect to us at KY History Pod on Twitter or Facebook, or you can email us, thelandbetweenthemeadows@gmail.com. Hope you're staying safe, and thanks for listening, and have a good day. See ya.